Hi folks, Jennifer Nelson here, founder of Scout Real Estate. Glad you're listening in. I created Pocket Hours podcast to elevate our game and help us all learn from the best. I have interviewed some of the top producers in our industry about best practices, among many other things. We also tackle industry issues and changes with great conversation from many of our leaders. And the best part is you get clock hours just for listening in. After you have listened to 3 episodes, just email info@scoutrealestate.com to answer a few easy questions for the interview, and you will receive your certificate. Meanwhile, enjoy listening and learning, and go out there and be the agent you would hire. I'm so excited to share this recording with you today. We have Chris Kalin, Shelly Godwin, Nicole Bennett, and our very own Kelly Satterfield on the show talking about parenting within our industry, how the challenges around parenting, being a good parent, and also being a good broker to our clients. And these folks show up authentically on the show. They talk about what's hard. They talk about systems they have in place. They talk about prioritizing their kids. They talk about making less money as a result of understanding their job and also just their desire to be a parent first, and apologizing to kids, good boundaries, showing your clients that you prioritize your kids. So many good nuggets in here. Can't wait for you to hear from them. So here we go. Hi, folks. Jennifer Nelson here with Pocket Hours, and I am excited today because we have another fabulous panel on the show of moms and dads in the industry. This has been a podcast topic that I've wanted to cover for a while, and our very own Kelly Satterfield from Scout is on this panel, and she and I were talking one day and decided, why would we not do a podcast that just says, hey, all you parents out there that are in the weeds like we are, trying to sell some houses and take care of our families, what is that like? And so we're going to get some tips and tricks. And honestly, I would expect for us to also hear, which I love about this podcast, some true authenticity around this is hard. This is hard work. And sometimes there's mommy guilt, daddy guilt. Sometimes there's, man, I'm a crappy agent because I decided to go to my kids' play, and back and forth. So we're going to get into that, the weeds on that as well. So first of all, I want to introduce our panel. So I'm going to start with Chris Kalin. Chris, thank you for being on the show. And how long have you been in the industry, and how many kids do you have?
Thanks, Jen. I've been in the industry about, I guess I'm in my 8th year at this point.
Okay.
I came in when my daughter was 2 years old, and she's in her 10s now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Shelly Godwin. Shelly
Hi.
and I go way back. We used to work at the same office years ago. And really quick side story, Shelly's daughter, Morgan, has been my dog walker for years. And my claim to fame in Morgan's life is that someday I'm going to help her buy a car from the proceeds of her walking my dog. So I feel excited about that.
Yeah. Oh my God. You should see. She has saved every penny from dog
Yes,
walking.
I love it.
I do too. I know Jennifer forever. She was one of the reasons I'm at Windermere, actually, is because she interviewed me. I've been in the industry almost 12 years. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 20, who's just newly launched, 18-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Nice.
So they started when they were 5, 7, and 8.5.
Oh, yes. Ooh, I can't wait to hear more about that. Okay. And then Nicole Bennett. Hey, Nicole, thanks for being on the show.
Thank
and
you.
Nicole and I also work together at a former firm, and is newer in the business. I always say she's newer because it feels like she came into this business knowing how to run it, which I love. She'll tell you she still feels like an infant in the business, but you've got great instinct. So how long have you been in the business, and tell us about your kids?
Yeah, so I am just 2 years in. I know that because I'm working on all my renewal stuff, and I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So if you do that math, I started and while I was on maternity leave, I had my first transaction. So this has been a wild ride.
And then lastly, Kelly Satterfield is in the house, and gosh, Kelly and I have been friends for a year, became friends almost instantaneously as she worked with me at another firm as well. And then we are now in the same firm. And Kelly, I knew you before you were even married. So let's go there, right? And now how many kids do you have? Sheesh.
My gosh, it's been a while. I have been in the industry for 8 years, and I have 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old. I have a 5-year-old. I have to think about this for a second. And I have a 10-and-a-half-month-old.
Nice.
Wow.
And I started in the industry in 2015 before I even had kids. So my first one, my 13-year-old is my stepson. My first one of my biological son, he was born in 2018. So I was in for a few years before I had him.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Again, thanks for being on the show. So what I want to cover today on the show is to give other parents out there, I guess, a sense of feeling like they're not alone in some of the feelings that they have encountered or will encounter. And then also maybe some best practices that you've figured out kind of trial by fire as you've been doing this on the go, right? Like there's no manual for this. There's nobody really that I think has gone before and said, hey, this is how you do real estate and be a parent. There's no information out there about that. So what can we offer to people that are in the position, whether they've got a brand new infant or, as Nicole did and even Kelly did, or they're up into it, say their kids are older, but they have lived this and figured out some things that have worked for them. So let's start with the hard stuff. I want you to think of a time when you were thinking, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way I can handle this client's needs or these clients' needs and be a good parent. I want you to think about a time. Does anybody have a story that immediately comes to mind when you're kind of want to pull my hair out? I'm going to quit real estate and quit parenting all at the same time. I'm just done with all of it.
I would say 2021.
Okay.
I sold a lot of homes in 2021, and I was not a good parent. I mean, I basically just wasn't present. My now ex-wife, but my wife at the time, she was unemployed due to COVID. She was selling advertising for Alaska Airlines magazine at the time, and they took the magazine off the plane. So she was home full time. And I don't know how I could have made it all work if she wasn't home full time, frankly. But yeah, 2021 on the whole was absentee parenting for me.
Yeah.
I feel like that too. I had middle schooler and 2 high schoolers, and I will tell you that age, I feel like it's, and a lot of people don't want to hear this, but honestly, I think parenting teenagers has been the hardest part of the whole parenting map. There were days that my husband and I would pour a drink at the end of the day and be like, I wish they were 2, 4, and 5.5. Like it was so much easier than what we're doing right now. And COVID just kind of threw everything on a tailspin, I think. Their emotions, their hormones, all of that. So I am so grateful that my husband and I worked through all of that, but it was tough. He did a lot of the parenting because I was trying to just stay afloat. And there was some deep depression with children and not learning, and just, it was tough. Right there with you. I think that was the hardest part of parenting and work.
Thank you both, Chris and Shelley, for that vulnerability. I really appreciate that. That goes a long way with our listeners they just feel like, oh, that's me. Thank you for saying that. But Shelley, I'll never forget this time I walked up to some local place near where Shelley and I live. And I walked in and she and her husband, Ted, are sitting there having a beer. And I said, oh my gosh, hey, Ted and Shelley, how are you? And they both are like, well, we hate our kids. And I was like, I wanted to stand up and cheer, that is so real and so right on. And they were escaping, literally escaping their lives, going to get a beer, get away from their house. And how real is that? It was just awesomely authentic. And for any of you, I know, I was just going to say, if any of you know Shelley and her husband, you know how much they love their kids. There's never a question, and how much they've sacrificed and how great their family is. But at that particular moment, they were like, we're done. We're out.
I remember that day too. We were in our sweatpants. We were oh my God. It was so bad.
I love it.
So we were see ya. Totally.
Yeah.
I remember that day really well.
Yeah, we're out. Parents are out. I love it.
Yeah, you're on your own for dinner, guys. See ya.
That's rad. Super rad.
I think I'll say that Nicole probably can relate to this too, because we have little ones. But I remember when I was pregnant with my 5-year-old, people were asking me, and it happened with my 10-month-old too, are you going to take maternity leave? And I'm like, I'm self-employed. There's no such thing as maternity leave when you're self-employed.
So true.
And when my 5-year-old was born, I remember taking the time that I needed after he was born. It took about a week to try to heal myself and rest and obviously bond with him and sort of find our new routine. But I had active buyers at the time. And I remember literally 7 days after he was born, I was out showing houses with him in his baby carrier. I think that was just how I rolled with both of them. My clientele had to be understanding enough and supportive enough of me and my family to be okay with that, because that's my life. Take it or leave it.
Okay.
Yeah, those early days with the infant they're wild. I actually
It's not funny. I totally agree.
There's something, you just block out so much of it, because otherwise biologically none of us would procreate, if you remember this.
So true.
That's how the human species keeps going.
That's
true. I had my first son, my son Otto, when I was working in corporate America. And it's funny, like talking about the maternity leave thing. It was at the time, he was born in 2019, and the company I worked for gave me 4 weeks. And so I was back at work way before I was ready to be. And it's a little bit different because it's not your schedule, it's someone else's schedule. And I know that there's a joke in real estate, like that's not really our schedule, it's our client schedule. But there's something so much more motivating about working with a client for yourself than just clocking in the hours and doing something. So when I got pregnant the second time, notice I had so much anxiety leading up to having the baby. And I realized that I had just very unaddressed postpartum depression from going back to work before I was ready, from just being away and having that guilt before I was ready to activate my life in that way again. And that was really what kind of spurred me into, while I was pregnant, I was like, this is not going to work. I can't do that again. What can I do? And that was where I started the adventure of trying to look into real estate. And I just remember at the time interviewing at companies and different brokerages, completely pregnant. So we would be on a Zoom call like this, and then I'd be like, they don't even know that there's like a basketball sized belly under the screen that they cannot see. And similar to Kelly though, I was still working my corporate job, and I did have maternity leave through that. And I was like, you know what, while I'm on maternity leave, I'm going to see if I can make this happen. So I did my first open house by myself, 4 weeks postpartum. And I remember telling someone that, and they were like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm changing the dialogue. I'm switching this up for my family. This is for me. I am thrilled to be here. And also it's like a great break to get away from a baby. But yeah, I mean, I remember going to see clients and having the infant in the car and pulling over so that I can feed the baby and changing poopy diapers and front lawns of showing houses. And
yeah,
all the things.
I have an almost 8-year-old daughter, as you all know, and we adopted her 8 years ago when I was into the industry, 12 years at that point. And I remember taking her to a very fastidious gay boy's house that I was selling. And I love him. He's a doctor, and he and his partner were there. And I brought my daughter along, who was very young, and she had a blowout. I mean, a blowout, right? And I was trying to change it without it making his entire house just wretched. And he was trying to be calm while at the same time really stopping himself from gagging. I mean, it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, this is so terrible. And finally, I went outside to the back of my car to finish it because I just felt so aware that he was struggling with kids. He doesn't do kids, he doesn't do smelly things apparently either. But it was a moment of, wow, this is hard to have Ruthie here, and she's just doing what's normally happening in her body. Uh-oh, the timing's terrible, right? And maybe Chris and Shelly, you can talk about this more, but I know Kelly and Nicole can too. Talk about a time when you brought your kid along to an appointment. I mean, Ruthie at this point, I don't know if she'll end up hating real estate as an adult because she's been to so many inspections or so many things tagged along. I try to have her not come as much as possible, but there's times when you can't, right? This is it. You got to come along. Can you think of anything like that?
There are so many. Go ahead, Shelley.
Oh no, I'm just thinking there's been a couple home inspections when they were little, but
Okay.
I think I was fortunate in the sense that especially my middle two are so inseparable that I would take them along and they could go outside and play and watch one another. There were certain clients that you knew that that was not acceptable, that you could not bring children. There were some that were totally fine with that. So I don't know if I have anything necessarily. I brought them into the office all the time. I feel like they've grown up. I mean, up at the workstation in Windermere, West Metro. And then my husband's self-employed too. So we never had man-to-man defense because we have three. So I would usually take the younger two. He would take the oldest. And so it would be like, and it would be sometimes like the totally passing of ships too. Like, here, let's switch kids. You take this one this way, that type of thing. I have taken them on open houses, and some people frown on that. Some people don't. It totally depends on who the clients are.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there are a couple times I've had sick kids. They came with me. So, because they couldn't go to school. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but mine were older when I started too. So
Yeah. I love it. Shelley takes her kids to the open house and then just brings the Girl Scout cookies too. She's like, I might as well. Like, here, you can buy cookies and see the house, right?
Totally.
Anyway, Kelly,
I remember just recently I had some buyers that were looking in West Seattle, and I had Aiden with me, my 5-year-old, and for whatever reason, he had to come to a showing with me with them. And they had met him before because they're repeat clients. We're in this house in West Seattle, and they're, looking around. And I think there was another agent that I knew in the house showing her client as well. And Aiden was like, Mommy, I have to go poop. And I'm like, super, like, let's hope there's toilet paper in this house right now, first of all. And it was one of those things where I was like, my clients are looking around. I'm like, hey, my 5, Aiden's in the bathroom pooping right now. And hopefully he gets done soon so we can move on to our next house. But I'm like, we just roll with it. And I mean, so many showings that I've done with Aiden. I just recently had some clients that were looking in Gig Harbor at the beginning of the year. And so I had to take Liam with me, who's my youngest, my 10-month-old, and, going to Gig Harbor. And these clients of mine have kids and they're bouncing Liam while we're showing houses. And, it's like, it's real life, right? I think for the most part, I've been really lucky and grateful for the fact that I have clients that are very accepting that if I have to bring my kids, I have to bring my kids.
Yep. Chris and Nicole, any add-ons on that?
I would just say, there isn't a thing you can do in real estate that my daughter Grace hasn't participated in at least, probably 3 or 4 dozen times. Tons of open houses, tons of showings. She's a pretty personable kid. A lot of times she'll, get involved in the conversation and give her opinions on the homes that we're in and stuff like that. So she gets very involved. She's been, I would say there's probably a couple homes that I transacted that she probably had some level of influence on the buyers buying. It's just, anyway, but she's an only child, so she's kind of a self-starter, and independent, if you will. So, she's happy drawing or reading and, some time on an iPad and that kind of thing. So, when she is along, she kind of knows her role, and, sometimes she's just, kind of keeping to herself. Now that she's 10, I occasionally will let her stay in the car if she doesn't want to come in and see the home, if we're like in a remote suburban neighborhood or something, not downtown or anything, obviously. But, she's been pretty easy as a child. So at the end of the day, I don't really have a lot to complain about or gripe about, but it is complicated, juggling schedules and trying to be multiple places at once. And of course, the occasional client that you feel like it would be inappropriate to take your kid. And I'm like driving to Gig Harbor to grandma's house to drop the kid off just so I can come back and do a half-hour showing, without the kid in tow, kind of thing, going, well out of your way to accommodate your clients sometimes, where your kid makes it hard. But it's just part of it. I think that, there's some trade-offs for this, great career that we have. And that's one of them,
True. Nicole?
Man, I have this horror story that pops into my head.
Do share.
My son's preschool, there's a friend there, and I've become friends with the parents, and they had, one of the people had gone and seen a house at an open house over the weekend, and they were like, everyone's got to see this. This is perfect. So we're trying to coordinate, and of course, coordinating with another family, and they have young kids is kind of messy. And we get this great idea, like, let's just pick up the kids at preschool and then we'll just go to the house. We'll just have the kids. Like, there's going to be 3 parents. It's going to be fine. Well, then I book this in showing time. There's some kind of confusion in showing time, and it is an owner-occupied house, and the owners are not aware that we're on our way. I'm not aware that they don't know that we're on their way.
Oh, God.
And we open the front door and we have 3 preschoolers just like run into the house, ready to go. We're screaming, take shoes off. And the people who are selling the house have kids. And these 3 preschoolers see this basket of toys and just dump it upside down. And they're just like going to town on these toys. I'm like, okay, it's all right. I'll clean it up before we leave. It's all right. It's all right. At this point, I don't know that the sellers are in the house. So I'm like, we'll just make sure it looks all good. And then all of a sudden the front door opens and this guy walks in and he's like, hi, are you guys looking at the house? And he has a kid. So this is one of the sellers. His wife was napping because she was pregnant. It's the middle of the day. It's her only nap she gets in the day. And we're like trashing. So that was one of the moments where you're like, okay, you know what? Like, it's great. We can bring our kids. And especially if you're working with people who have kids and can understand, but man, they were so gracious, but I was struggling with that.
Did you end up selling that house to those clients?
No, they ended up not wanting to put in an offer.
Okay. I was going to say, even if they did, the sellers are like, get out. No, thank you. No,
I feel like it was probably for the best.
Exactly. Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit, sort of, to talk about parent guilt. It's been named mommy guilt, but for sure, Chris, you're in the mix here to say, especially as a single parent, as you're trying to care for your kid and as you're trying to be present for them and be involved in the things that they are doing, and you're trying to also care for your clients. But let's go back to just parent guilt in regards to how's that hit you? What has that looked like? And then I think let's try to switch into what have you done that you found to help with that? Because that's real. That's a real thing. We can't be all the places we want to be or need to be at the same time. And sometimes they converge, right? Where a client really needs you and so does your kid. And what do you do? And what do you do with the guilt around that one way or the other? So what comes to mind when I say parent guilt? Anything come up for you other than yep, I have that?
I think for me, it was it's sort of traveled through my career. So I think at the beginning, for a lot of us, I'm sure we can relate to the fact of, trying to find the balance in your schedule and when you can actually say no to people and have sort of parameters around what's family time and what's work time. And when I was early in the industry, I didn't know any of that. I was yes to everything. And
you must do.
Yeah. And that's a hard balance, right? So I think when my 5-year-old was born, and it was me and my husband and my 5-year-old and the 13-year-old, at the time was a lot younger, and we're trying to sit down and have dinner. I'm sure you all can relate to this, right? And then you've got clients that want to write an offer and you're stepping away from dinner, and dinner's kind of a sacred time in our house of sitting down at the dinner table and having dinner together. So, way back when I didn't have that balance, I didn't know that I could say, you're going to have to wait an hour until, my family dinner's done. And I think now, 8 years into my career, I do have that mom guilt of, sometimes I feel like I want to be present for my kids, so I'm not working enough. And I have guilt around the fact that I'm not working enough. And then when I'm working so much, then I have mom guilt that I'm not present and I'm not being a part of XYZ activities or school or whatever. I mean, I was just picking up my 5-year-old and my 13-year-old at school yesterday, and I was on the phone with clients thinking that I could wrap it up in time before school got out. And the conversation just kept on going. And, I'm trying to wrangle them from school pickup. I'm on the phone with my clients. I'm having to tell them to lower your voice because I'm on the phone. Just yesterday it happened to me, having some guilt around that. I think it's always a constant battle, but I think 8 years in now, I'm still learning how to have parameters, but I think I'm a lot more conscious now than I was 8 years ago to say, here are my time blocks. Here is when I'm going to be present. Here's when I'm going to be working. And my family can expect me to, hold on to and be there for the times that I say I'm going to be there, and not stepping away when there's important things going on in our family.
I think I realized about 5 years ago, I was selling more real estate than I am now. And it didn't feel good. I had help but it just wasn't, I wasn't showing up for my kids when they needed to, when I really needed to be there. Even though my husband's self-employed too, and we can juggle each other's schedules, I really took a big step away and said, I only have this much time left at home with my kids. I'm not doing this. And I will tell you this too, my daughter's a junior, she's my youngest. I have really put the boundaries up and said, I have such a short period left and it's so stinking fun. I don't want to miss out. So I feel really good about where I am right now saying, no, I'm not going to do it. You know what? She'll go off to college. Our middle one will be launched then too. I'll have all the time to go build up and sell that many houses again. I know I can. I'm not giving up this small little time. So I think it's a choice. Like, how busy do you want to be? How much business do you really, really need to be sustainable? And you have one shot at parenting. And ultimately, to me, that's more important. I mean, my career is important. Obviously, I need to pay the bills and pay my mortgage, and I would like to retire. But, but I have one shot at being a mom. I don't want to mess it up. And I felt like I was messing it up. And I may have messed it up anyways. I mean, even with how much I've tried, I just need to know that I felt like I put more effort into them than I ever did to anything else besides my marriage.
Oh, well said, Shelley. I like it. I like it. Good. Anybody else?
It took a long time, though. It took a long time for me to get there.
Yeah.
And I had to feel really uncomfortable and not good in order to realize, like, this is not working for me.
Yeah. Yep. Chris and Nicole, any thoughts on guilt?
Just the COVID years for me. I mean, I just worked so hard. I felt responsible for backfilling my wife's lost income, was very nervous. I felt that what was going on in the industry wasn't sustainable and there'd be a huge backlash. And here we are. And I felt like I needed to sort of create a war chest. So I said, yes to everything, and, just worked a ton. And my wife and daughter, were doing a lot of camping and a lot of hiking and, traveling, to see friends here in state by car, that kind of thing. And I just wasn't able to go on a lot of trips. I feel like I missed a lot of, important kind of family moments, and you can't recreate that. It's gone, right? That plane took off. Now I try and, temper some of that guilt by just ensuring that I have quality time with my daughter. There really isn't a standing, schedule, if you will, other than my co-parenting plan. But, when I do have time and we're together, just make sure that we're maximizing that time. We're not just existing in each other's space, but we're doing stuff together that's fun and building memories and stuff like that. And that helps overcome things a little bit. I know that she appreciates it and she sees it.
Pocket Hours is brought to you by Scout Real Estate. Hi, I'm Jennifer Nelson, owner at Scout Real Estate. I started this firm with the vision of doing things differently, with our focus on legendary service for our clients and creating a community of producing agents to spur each other to do higher quality work. If you are interested in learning more about how a small group of like-minded brokers have come together to have some fun while doing a lot of business, reach out to me, 206-227-7966, or email jennifer@scoutrealestate.com. I promise you this, fun is a high priority for me, but so is winning. So if you appreciate those two things, you might be interested in Scout. Looking forward to hearing from you. Kids are incredibly intuitive, more than we give them credit for. And I think they realize when we're present and being intentional about time, and when we're sort of fitting them in to our work schedule, and the difference it's huge for them. Ruthie will be absolutely fine doing artwork, doing something around the house, and I'm doing something else, and I'll pick up the phone to take a work call, and all of a sudden she needs me. And you're like, for the last 2 hours, you've been fine. We've been kind of having fun in our house. But the minute I am not present with her, meaning just in the same space, kind of doing our thing, mom's attention is diverted and I want it back, right? So they're picking up our energy all the time. It's sort of amazing. Nicole, you want to add anything?
Just on the phone thing, it's funny. There's no faster way to get your kids' attention than to pick up the phone.
It's true. So true.
It's always when my kids need me the most.
Yes.
Yeah. Every single day, there's some moment of guilt where I feel like I could have handled that better. I could have done that different. I just practice a lot of apologies with my kids and just try to acknowledge they're super young, but I probably twice a day sit down, get to their level, and I'm like, hey, you really needed my attention, and I wasn't there. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably a broken record to them, but I hope that they at least know that it's sincere.
I love that. Yeah, that's super important. Being able to admit to your kids, no matter the age, when you've messed up is such a great practice for them to model too, right? For them to know how to do that. It comes to mind a story about Larry Kendall, and I think you all know who that is, the founder of the group and also the Ninja selling process. And in his installation, he tells a story that you might be reminded of as I'm telling it. And that is this. He came to a point in his career when he realized he didn't have to be the yes man all the time to his clients. And in fact, he said in talking with his wife, they decided through their year how many speaking engagements he was going to take for the year. How many times do I want to be gone and forget whatever? And then that was the amount he was going to take. And so this company calls him and says, Larry, we want you to come out. We're willing to pay you 3 times what anybody else pays you. We really want you. And he says, oh no, I'm sorry. I've already hit my 8 times a year that I'm going to be gone. And they're like, you're kidding me. Like, we're offering you this amazing opportunity to come. This is how it's going to benefit you. We're going to offer you all this money. And he says, no, I hear you. But you see, what happened was I made this agreement that I would only be gone 8 times a year. And I've already fulfilled those 8 times a year. And something super powerful when I heard that was him saying, oh no, here's my boundary. And I'm so clear on it. And there's no amount of money, which in our world, I think is important to remember, that can shift that. So let's transition a little bit into, and you've all sort of hit on it, how do you create boundaries? And whether you keep to them all the time, different story. I understand our business is weird, but what have you done successfully to say, I am going to carve out this time for my family, and then that helps me actually be a better agent for my clients? What has that looked like in your life?
There's maybe 80, 90% of my business that comes, sort of naturally through referrals or, sphere, that kind of thing. But I won't put in another like 80% of energy to capture another 10% of business, right? It's just not worth it to me to just barely inch the needle forward, but like literally kill myself to make it happen and not be present for, my friends, my family, my daughter, that kind of thing. And so I think that there are a lot of people who feel like you really have to grind all the time in this business and squeeze every last drop out of, opportunity that you can. And I just disagree with that. I think sometimes the market's going to be naturally slow, and take that as a moment to really, build memories and stuff with your kid. And, that's going to balance when it's frothy again and, you're not going to be as present. I'm not saying, roll over and don't apply yourself and that kind of thing. I certainly do. But, I'm just not going another, not doubling my effort for another, 10% of business or something. It's just not a fair exchange.
Great point.
I think you have to have systems in place, whether it be Buffini, Ninja, what have you. I think if you have your systems in place and you stick to the system, which it's hard to do sometimes because life gets in the way. But if you do like your Ninja 9 and you do like what you're saying too, you're consistent and you know where you get your business and you concentrate on that, I think it all comes, and then you're able to have more time. And I do agree, like, why put that extra effort to squeeze to get that extra sale? Like I get that, because that's where I'm like, I can't do that right now. I don't want to do it. Maybe I'll do it when Morgan's out, when it's just Ted and I at home and I have more time. But right now I'm not willing to do that either.
That strikes a chord with me with what Chris just said, because I've been having this conversation with myself lately internally to say, why am I not doing more open houses on the weekends? And I used to be all about open houses earlier in my career because, I was able to pick up buyers and create relationships and things like that. And I think what Chris just said really states the fact of why I haven't been doing it. And because weekends are, you keep using the word sacred, but weekends are, really busy in our house with kids' activities. And my husband works out of the house, long days during the week. And those are his opportunities on the weekends to have some of his own time to wind down and do things for him personally. So I need to be present on the weekends with the kids and allow him to do that and be present with kids' activities and have our rest days on the weekends to just spend at home as a family. So I've been feeling the guilt of not picking up more open houses and grabbing onto those opportunities. But what Chris said is exactly how I feel, that taking that time away from my family and from my kids to maybe pick up some buyers and really try to hustle those open houses for, incrementally what that business might look like. I feel bad saying it's not worth it to me, but it's, at this point in my career and at this point in my life, it's just not worth it to me for me and my family.
You'll probably get that back though, because I
Absolutely.
felt that way when my kids were little. And then open houses are my bread and butter. Like
Right.
They are my jam. I love them. But what I've done is schedule them around Morgan Scott's softball. So I usually try to do the Sunday morning open because I just want to be present when she gets home. Even if she doesn't want to see me, she's 17. She's, maybe she wants to talk, maybe she doesn't, but I want to be home.
Right.
And then, my middle, you'll get it back.
Yeah.
And then your kids grow. And so if that's where you need to take a step back now, and you'll pick it back up later.
Well, and that's like what you said, Shelley, that you don't get that time back, right? When they're young
No.
and when they're teenagers and they don't want to be around me and my husband, then, that's maybe when I'll step back into it. But
then you'll realize that they do need you there, even though they're like, you're not saying anything,
right.
that you're just present.
Right.
I feel like my husband and I talk about this all the time. Like, this is the time we feel like they've needed us 10 times more than, even though they need you physically, well, they need you all the time.
Right.
But just knowing that you're there, because occasionally you'll get that really profound conversation with them.
Yeah. Well, and my 10-month-old is in, he's our last, and, he's in childcare all week. My 5-year-old and my 13-year-old are in school full time, but, my 10-month-old is reaching milestones, right? The crawling and the babbling and the talking and the walking. And when he's in childcare all week, I'm like, I want to be a little selfish and have that time with him on the weekends to experience all of those milestones. So, when they get to be teenagers, like, those milestones are a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to just piggyback on something Shelley said, just as a point of reference. When I asked Shelley to be on this podcast, Shelley's first response was, well, when is the recording? And I said, well, I don't know. We're looking at these couple days. And she said, well, this is all dependent on Morgan's schedule. So if it works out that I'm not supposed to be with Morgan, I'm happy to do it. But if it conflicts with a time when I'm with Morgan, the answer is no. And I respected it immediately because I thought, shoot, look at that priority right there. And I want to piggyback on that again to say, I'm not the only one that's going to respect that. Your clients will too. Your clients will too, right? They understand that you are a parent first and that you're going to get to their business, but that you need to make sure you're very, very specific in your timing. And you can't just be available all the time, which, by the way, I think is a bad way to be in life anyway. So good job, Shelley.
I love, Shelley, just the idea of having systems in place and just stacking your time and planning, because Kelly and I have joked many times about being moms with young kids. You work in margins, but to make that time effective, you have to be ready. And if you have those systems, if you have those plans, then when you have that little bit of a margin, you know exactly where to start, and you're not spending time figuring out, what do I need to be doing? So that's a really timely thing.
Nicole and I will exchange Marco Polos when we're both in the car with our kids, and we're like, hey, just block out the kids. I have a message to send you, I promise, but the kids are in the background, and can't tell you how many times Nicole and I have exchanged messages like that. It's hysterical.
Yeah. And I love, Nicole, what you just said, and I wrote it down because I thought it was so well said, working in the margins. I mean, we could probably all remember when our kids were young enough, and you two are living that right now, where they're taking a nap and you feel like, I've got 1.5, maybe 2 hours tops right now, and I've got to go ballistic. I'm on my computer and I'm trying to get as many things done as I can on my list, because as soon as they wake up, I can't be on my computer again, right? And I do think that that's true even after they're, when they get a little bit older, it's less frenetic than that. But that is when we say, here's our window and here's what we can do in our window. And boy, and to Shelley saying to me, here's when I can do the podcast and the rest of the time I can't, right? Go ahead. Shelley,
No, I was just going to say, Morgan right now too, is she's doing travel softball. It's college recruiting. It's a big deal. So that was with her. I'm like, I'm in California so much right now. And that's the other thing too, is when your kids get older and they're doing these fantastic, amazing things, you need to have like it sounds like Kelly and Nicole have this rapport. I have people that are my age with kids my age, and I'll be like, I'm going out of town. Can you cover for me?
Yeah.
And they totally understand because their kids are in sports too. And they're like, yes. And vice versa. I will, cover for them too.
Absolutely.
So blocking out that time to be in these, events that are monumental for them is a big deal.
Oh my gosh, Shelley, you couldn't have had a better segue. I was literally about to say, let's talk about support. I seriously was. This is amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's like we cheated. It's like I was texting her and saying, "Can you say this? Can we do that?" That didn't happen, folks. Listeners, this is live right now. Let's talk about support. So in this business, I want you all to comment on how have you figured out how important support is for another broker? How do you set up a system so that when you want to be present for your family and need to be, that you can still attend to your clients' needs? What has that looked like for you?
I have so many different buckets of support set up. But
that's like me too.
Yeah. I have a really great network of friends that are moms outside of real estate, but they're in our lives constantly. Our kids know them and they're on the ready. So I can't tell you how many times I'm last minute text messaging, like, I got to drop the kids, who's around? And just last week, I was running errands all over, doing a few things. I had my 2-year-old with me, and then I needed to go and do a showing. So I'm like, I can't do this with her. I just knew the mood she was in. It was also nap time. That was going to go south. So I texted a friend. I'm like, can I drop her off? She's like, yeah. And I was like, great. I'm in sweats. Can I also go through your closet and borrow some clothes? And so I did. I wore her clothes. And but that's the one bucket of just like support, the background of needing that. And then I've really found a lot of people and like brokers who Kelly's been great because we have young kids. There's some other people that have older kids, but did this when they have young kids, and just across the board, just having someone to reach out to and talk to. And just when my eyes are rolling in the back of my head, I feel like a crazy person, to just be reminded, like, yes, this is crazy. And yes, it's going to be okay.
I love it. I love that you borrowed her clothes too. That's amazing. That's a good friend. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's funny.
What does support look like for the rest of you?
We're very lucky to have my parents about 30 minutes away, down south. My dad was actually in the industry and was a broker at my previous firm for a while. So when Aiden was born and I had to go do showings, a lot of times my dad would step in or come to the showing and take care of Aiden with me. We have some really amazing childcare supporters. We're in a couple different nanny shares with our 5-year-old and our 10-month-old. And, funny story, like this is real life, but, just a couple months ago, Liam was a lot younger, and, you try to squeeze in self-care appointments when you can during the week, right? So I'm like super last minute booking self-care appointments. And one of my colleagues at Scout, I had to go grab like an eyebrow waxing appointment. And I'm like, girl, I need to go do this. You're right next door to this salon that I need to go to. Can you take Liam and feed him for a few minutes while I just scoot into this waxing appointment to get my eyebrows waxed? Because this girl needs some self-care right now. Like, it's those things where, your friends, your colleagues, like your network of people. Like, I just am super grateful for people in my life that get it, whether they have kids or not, they get it and they're willing to step in when we're challenged. So yeah, I have amazing people in my life. I'm really grateful for that.
So Chris, the last time you got your eyebrows done, now you know what you can do.
Never. I might have gotten a manicure here or there, but
nice.
Not the eyebrows.
There you go.
So, for me, my ex and I divorced amicably. We're still really good friends. We both have very complicated schedules. We pass our daughter back and forth like a baton at times, and it's just not happening under the same roof anymore. But, she's in Burey and I'm in West Seattle. It's not terribly inconvenient to, step in if something's come up. I also have a business partner. So, if there's something that absolutely needs to happen and my schedule can't do that conveniently, I'll typically look to him first to see if he can stand in for me. And then, my ex-wife's parents both all live in the area too. They've been divorced and remarried. And so she has family on Vashon and family in Gig Harbor. If I have like an extremely busy weekend and it's my weekend, with my daughter or something, I may pass her off to a grandparent for like an overnight or something like that and kind of jigger my schedule to, compress it for the time that she's away. That might seem a little bit selfish here and there, but to be honest with you, at times my daughter would rather go stay with her grandparent than go do real estate with me for a whole day. So it just is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I have a lot of support. I was also a stay-at-home dad for 2.5 years between my advertising career and my real estate career. And I did the what do they call it? PEPS, the program for early parental support. I was in the first and second cohorts for the stay-at-home dad group that they did. And so I have like 5 guy friends that all have kids my daughter's age, like within a month or two. And, at times they've stepped in, I'm like, hey, can we have a play date? I need to drop, Grace off for a couple hours at this time. And, vice versa. I mean, they're busy as well while they're not in real estate. I mean, there's times when, I'm getting their kid too, So I think through, a number of different avenues, I think, there's been pretty decent support. Sometimes it takes more time to tap into that support than the actual time away that you need, which is, frustrating at times. Like I said,
Sure.
driving to Gig Harbor to drop off my daughter because I need a half hour, but it just goes that way sometimes. So yeah.
That's great. Shelly, anything to add?
I'm lucky too because my kids walk home from the ferry and then but I usually like to be home when they get home from school just to be the presence there. But my parents live 6 blocks away. It's great. So if I ever needed help, they'd come down. And then like I said, my husband's self-employed. And then I feel like I've got support in the office too, because we call them my work besties. And it takes time to cultivate these relationships too. But I just feel like I have this group of women in the office that will cover for me and vice versa. And it's so wonderful to know that you have that group of people behind you. I just think you have to find your people, whether it be family, friends, what have you. But I'm in a different boat. When they were little, it was harder. But I mean, mine can drive.
Yeah.
So.
That helps.
It does help. But I keep going back to the fact that teenagers need you there and they need you to be present and they need to know that you're showing up. So,
Yep. Yeah. No matter the age, I like it. I'm going to do, just for purposes of time, I'm going to do a quick sort of summary of some of the points you all have made. And then I'm going to ask for sort of a last call. If there's anything else as you're hearing me summarize the show that you want to add, we'd love to hear any additional comments. So here goes. We talked about support just now, both in office or other brokers. It doesn't have to be in your own office, but other brokers that you can call on to help with showings or things that need to happen that you don't want to attend to or can attend to, but also support from other people that can take your kid when you really need to attend to this client need, right? That you can have those outlets and help set up. So any parent that's listening to this that says, gosh, I don't have that set up, go find it. Go figure out, go talk to another parent that you respect and trust and say, can we work out a situation where I can call on you when I need help? The second thing we talked about or throughout this conversation was just to show your clients that you're going to prioritize family first and that truly they will respect that. Even if you lose some people, lucky you just lost really crappy clients that you don't want to work with anyway. People that don't understand that and don't respect that aren't your people anyway. So don't be afraid to say, like I did the other night, my client said, hey, can we talk at 7 about our offer? And I said, that is smack dab in the middle of nighttime routine. I'll call you when it's done. And let me tell you, we never know when it's done with Ruthie. She could talk for an hour. We could read 10 books. We don't know. But I'm not going to cut that time short in order to talk about an offer because that can wait. That can wait. I'll talk to you at 9:00 tonight when my kid's asleep, but I'm not going to interrupt that time, right? So show your clients what you're prioritizing. Have good boundaries. That's kind of included in what I just said, but boy, the more you can get that solidified now, especially with younger kids, the more that's going to serve you and attract the kind of people you want to work with are people that respect those boundaries. And then Shelley said it really well, is that we limited time with our kids and real estate is always there. And at the risk of sounding super cliche, it's true. It's just true that, our kids are here for a limited time, even though some days, wow, it feels like it's forever, right? What do they say? What's the saying? Long days and short years or whatever it is, right?
The days are long, but the years are short.
There it is. There it is. And boy, I feel that too. And I think we all have. But at the end of it, we don't want to look back and say, thank God I made $500,000 more at the risk of losing time with these kids that need us, right? Who cares about the money? And I say that from a privilege point I get, but really, who cares about the extra money when we have a kid that needs us? We have to prioritize the kids. One shot at being a parent. I wrote that down. That was another Shelley-ism. There's going to be Shelley-isms on the show. And to Nicole's point, just being able to apologize to your kids when you recognize that you didn't make the right choice, because you will again. Right? There will be times when you have to make a last minute choice and you make the wrong one, and you can go to your kid and say, man, I should have prioritized you at that moment. I made a mistake there, and letting them hear that from you. So gosh, what awesome nuggets from this, y'all. I hope I've enjoyed it. I've taken a lot of notes over here, and I know that other parents in our industry will really appreciate you being vulnerable and showing up on this podcast to share your experience. Last comments from any of you. Love to hear from you.
I would add that I wish I recognized earlier on in my career the need to transition between work speed and work intensity and family speed and family intensity. And there's a lot of times I'd come, wading into family life, just, coming from a very hopped up, anxious or, tense kind of transaction or something like that, and not have effectively switched gears and felt like I was, maybe marshaling and, driving like my family in the same way you would drive a business, right? I'm much more present to that today. And I just would say, to anybody that's watching that's maybe newer in their career, that's something that I wish I had done differently when I was early in my real estate career.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah, Shelley.
I think I went back to the systems. I think the sooner you put in the systems that work for you and stay disciplined, always. Because if you continue to do that, you're able to know that the business is coming in. I feel like I'm really there now, but I didn't do it right when I started. I think I was so confused about like, oh my gosh, I'm learning a new industry. How do I do it all? And there are really systems that are there for you to do. Put them in place, whatever works best for you. Because then I think it's easier to transition to what Chris said, to come home and put all that craziness behind you, and then live your life, really.
I think I'll say just give yourself grace. So many people told me that when my 5-year-old was born, that I wanted to, still push really hard and still grind really hard. And there's guilt that came with that. And I think that we just have to give ourselves grace. It's sometimes hard to shut off the job entirely. Like my husband and I and our baby are leaving on a trip tomorrow. My laptop is coming with me. My, phone obviously is coming with me. I don't ever shut it off completely because I just don't think I can. And I kind of frankly don't want to, but I also try to remind myself to give myself the grace to, when I'm feeling guilty, whatever the feelings are, this business is not for the faint of heart. It's hard all the way around. It's hard. It's a hard business. It's hard to juggle family. It's hard to juggle personal stuff for yourself and self-care. So just keep reminding yourself to give yourself some grace.
Love
it.
It
Reminds me of one of my favorite jokes in real estate. People say they get into it for the flexible schedule. And they say, yeah, you can work any 80 hours a week you want.
For sure.
But it's totally up to you.
That's great.
And it's, there's truth to that. Yeah. I mean, you could, go have an extra long lunch with a friend, or you could go, play a round of golf or something like that. But you're going to pay for that somewhere else in your week,
Mm-hmm.
So
choose your 80 hours. I like it.
Yeah.
Nicole, anything from you?
I think just frequent check-ins with what's working, especially if you have little kids. Developmental milestones happen. And it seems like every quarter we're reworking something where like this schedule, this routine worked really good, but we're in a different season now. And so just constant, it seems like a lot, but I feel like every time something feels good, we're like, all right, let's get ready to root it up and change it. But just being okay with that and making sure that you're doing those check-ins to make sure everyone's coming along and on the right path in the right direction.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So fun. So fun, you all. This has been really, really great. I want to just add a quick shout out to our listeners who say, I'm not a parent. I hope you got something out of this, but you might be in a different spot. Maybe you're caring for aging parents. Maybe there's another priority in your life that you really do need to prioritize over real estate. This isn't just about kids, although that's the main theme of this. I think there are truths in this that can apply to you, whether you are an actual parent of children or have another situation in your life that feels just like that you have to attend to. So Thank you, Chris, Shelley, Kelly, Nicole. Appreciate so much you giving up your time and your expertise and your vulnerability. And hopefully this really helps some of our listeners. So thanks for being on the show. Thank you so much for listening into Pocket Hours. I hope this has been interesting, fun, made you laugh, made you think, spurred you on to do and implement some new things in your business. I appreciate your time and hope this has been a good use of it, period. Now, go be the agent you would hire.